You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. Welcome to the show. It is Wednesday, July 16th, 2014, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us today. We got all sorts of great news and interviews you can use for the cannabis community. And let's start things off by welcoming back to our program our Colorado Bureau Director. We've got Priscilla Sabet out there on the line. How you doing, Priscilla?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm going to fix the adjust the camera there. There we go. Got that fixed there. So yeah, we've got some great stuff coming up today. But today, I don't know if you caught this, Priscilla. Earlier this morning, Kevin Sabet had a debate with Judge Jim Gray right there in Golden, Colorado. Did you hear about that?
I did. I heard about that. I was following your rants on Twitter. They're pretty amusing.
Well, we'll do some of those Twitter rants in our Radical Rant today. I'm going to tell you all about debunking Kevin Sabet's latest stupid talking points. There's some new stuff that came out of his mouth this time, and I got to get that debunked as soon as possible. Stay tuned. At the end of the show, we'll cover that. And also tomorrow, we're going to have a very special edition of the Russ Belville Show. As you know, I'm flying out to Fort Lauderdale, Florida tomorrow, so I won't be able to bring you a live show. But what I did today is I recorded that whole debate, the hour-long debate, and in the hour afterwards, I went into detail debunking every single thing Kevin Sabet had to say. So if you want to know how to argue against Kevin Sabet, tomorrow is the day you want to watch the show. 2 hours at our regular time, 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and replaying at 6 to 8. There we go, Pacific time. You can catch the replays of that, and it'll be on the following morning on Friday as well. 4 different airings of the Kevin Sabet Jim Gray debate with my commentary afterwards. Check that out tomorrow while I'm in the air. And then on Friday, I will be in Miami Springs, Florida, bringing you a live edition of the show from Miami Springs. But on today's show, we've got more stuff to bring to you. Of course, we start with our 420 radio news. Priscilla Sabet will bring us the latest headlines that include the U.S. House of Representatives agreeing to Treasury Department guidelines on banking and marijuana businesses. Whoop, whoop. That's good news. Marijuana decrim begins tomorrow in Washington, D.C. We'll tell you all about it. Andrew Sullivan, the conservative blogger and gay rights activist, will be heading to Portland to deliver the keynote address at the International Marijuana Conference. And Illinois patients could start using medical marijuana as early as 2015. But I'll tell you about one of the catches that make it one of the stupidest rollouts of medical marijuana I've ever heard of. All of that's coming up on the news right after our first break. And then in our second segment, Behind the Headlines, turns out we got 2 high-profile SEC college football players just got popped for weed. One's a quarterback, one's a defensive back. We'll tell you all about it in the Behind the Headlines segment and what marijuana and college athletics are going to have to come to terms with as the future of legalization rolls out. And then at the 30 after segment, the half past segment, Ladies of Legalization segment, we're going to go back to the archives and show you interviews with 3 women who are fighting hard for marijuana legalization. Dr. Uma Dhanabalan, MD, and Sharon Ravert. We videoed them at the Georgia State Capitol last February. We'll show you that. Plus, we've got an interview with Diane Goldstein from LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. She's a board member and a former lieutenant commander at the Redondo Beach Police Department. We interviewed her at the Los Angeles Cannabis Cup. We'll bring that to you as well. Plus, we got Toker Talk Radio in hour 2, where you are the voice of the marijuana nation. We'll take your calls at 971-533-7111. Stick around. Priscilla and the News is next.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, fighting prohibition since 2012.
Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz thinks it's okay for medical marijuana patients to go to federal prison. On May 30th, she voted against an amendment that would respect Florida's new laws and protect Florida's patients. Even though 88% of Florida voters support medical marijuana, why would Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz vote to send patients like this to prison? Is Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz out of touch with Florida?
420radio.org is proud to replay Jorge Cervantes TV from Barcelona, Spain. Jorge Cervantes, the author of the best-selling books in marijuana horticulture, has dropped the disguises and brings you pro indoor and outdoor grow tips from the European masters. Catch the replays Thursday at 1 Pacific on 420.
I don't use marijuana, but as a teacher of 36 years, I can tell you lots of other people use it. I don't believe in prohibition. I don't think it works. Prohibiting it hasn't stopped anybody from getting a hold of it. I would like to see it regulated so that maybe kids can't get a hold of it so easily. I know they get a hold of it now very easily. I support a new approach to marijuana. I support legalizing it. It's with us. It's not going to go away. And if we can get money through the taxation, we can also educate our kids about it. That's why I support it.
It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Priscilla Simon.
Hey folks, it's your 420 Radio News for Wednesday, July 16th, 2014. So the U.S. House of Representatives voted 236 to 186 today to approve Treasury Department guidelines to allow banks to do business with legal marijuana businesses. Woo woo! Lawmakers rejected a move by Representative John Fleming, Republican of Louisiana, to block the Treasury Department from implementing guidance it issued in February telling banks how to report on their dealings with marijuana-related businesses without running afoul of federal money laundering laws. Quote, they are operating just in cash, which creates its own potential for crime, robbery, assault, and battery, end quote, said Representative Earl Perlmutter, Democrat of Colorado, whose state has legalized recreational pot use. Quote, you cannot track the money. There is skimming and tax evasion. So the guidance by the Justice Department and the guidance by the Treasury Department is to bring this all into the open, end quote. The vote is largely symbolic since Treasury already had gone ahead with the guidance, but it demonstrates a loosening of anti-marijuana sentiment on Capitol Hill. A coalition of 46, mostly GOP moderates and libertarian-tilting Republicans joined with all but 7 Democrats to beat back Fleming's attempts to block Treasury guidance.
Well, this may merely be symbolic, but it's one hell of a symbol. Let me tell you, the U.S. House saying that, yeah, marijuana money, it ought to be deposited into bank accounts. They ought to be able to get loans. They ought to be able to have credit. You know, they ought to be able to work like any other business. And I've said for a long time, man, that Republicans are going to latch onto this issue. And so far, it's just kind of that edge, you know, those libertarians and the moderates. And, you know, it's nice to see your representative, Earl Perlmutter, making these points, Priscilla.
Yeah, I agree. And really, you know, everything is a legit business, so we need to just operate like legit businesses.
Yeah, and so we got 46 Republicans who joined all the Democrats but 7. I want to know who these 7 Democrats were that thought it was better that the marijuana industry be all cash. Let's find out who those guys are. Maybe we can run some commercials against them. This is going to be a much more important issue. And when we roll around to 2016 and the 2016 presidential race, believe me, marijuana legalization is going to be a huge issue for whoever the Democrats and Republicans put up there to run for president. We'll already have 4 states with legalization. We'll have more than half of the United States with medical marijuana. They won't be able to avoid this issue any longer.
Nope. Marijuana decriminalization begins tomorrow in Washington, D.C., with a mere $25 fine for possession of up to 1 ounce. At midnight, the 60-day congressional review period on D.C.'s law expires, and decriminalization will radically change how police deal with citizens. Under new orders set to take effect Thursday, police can no longer take action upon simply smelling the odor of marijuana, nor can they demand that a person found in possession of up to 1 ounce produce identification. An attempt by Representative Andy Harris of Maryland to attach an amendment forbidding the district from implementing the decriminalization law was soundly criticized by the Obama administration yesterday, noting how that it would prevent police from writing the decrim tickets and prevent courts from enforcing the $25 fine.
Yeah, you got to love Andy Harris's attempt to try to block this. You can't spend any money on it. All right, well, I guess we can't write any tickets then, can we? Oh, wait. Didn't really think that one through, Andy, did you? Well, this is good news. We got this is going to be the lowest fine for possession that exists. I mean, lower than the 0 that exists in Washington and Colorado. Other than that, right? Other than it being legal. But as far as decrim states go, it's usually like $100 fine, $200 fine, $25. That's a great fine. And why they came up with that is they pointed out that the people on the street that are getting harassed and busted for possession of marijuana are usually the people who can't afford it. They're usually poor people. If they were rich, they'd stay inside and smoke their weed, right? They wouldn't go out on the stoop. They wouldn't go out in the park or whatever. So it's good that they've got this low ticket amount. It's great that this decrim is going into an effect. And I hope people understand, sometimes when the baby steps are happening, we get frustrated. We think it should be all legal as much as we want and all that, and we'll get there. But understand the impact of even just this little decrim of an ounce. Cops can't mess around with you if they smell pot. That's the number one way cops mess with pot people these days is they smell some. So when you take that out of their little toolbox, that takes away a lot of the harassment that marijuana consumers have to face. We saw this in Massachusetts. It's not legal in Massachusetts, but it's decriminalized, and their Supreme Judicial Court just decided that the mere smell of marijuana, burnt or unburnt marijuana, doesn't matter. Burnt marijuana smoke or, fresh marijuana buds, doesn't matter. That is not probable cause to initiate searches against marijuana consumers. So never underestimate how big these baby steps can actually be.
Author and blogger Andrew Sullivan will give the keynote address at an international marijuana conference in Portland this fall. The International Cannabis Business Conference will be held September 13th and 14th at the Oregon Convention Center. Sullivan, who wrote Here Comes the Groom, a conservative case for gay marriage, and Virtually Normal, an argument about homosexuality, has written about legalizing marijuana. 4 years ago, he published The Cannabis Closet, First-Hand Accounts of the Marijuana Mainstream, a collection of testimonials from his readers. Quote, his brand of conservatism has led him to become one of the most articulate advocates for ending cannabis prohibition today, end quote. Organizers Anthony Johnson and Alex Rogers said in an email announcing Sullivan's appearance. The conference, which costs $499 to attend, is expected to draw marijuana industry representatives from the West Coast, according to Rogers.
Yeah, this is going to be a great conference, and I'll be a part of this. I'm actually appearing on a panel to discuss marijuana legalization that's happening in Washington, Colorado, California, and Oregon. So both me and the California guy, we're just kind of predicting what's going on and what people are doing as far as trying to pass legalization. But there are so many good folks that are going to be at this conference, including Andrew Sullivan, who I'm really looking forward to meeting. In my blogging history, prior to me being a marijuana blogger and activist, I was a gay rights blogger and activist. Now, I'm straight, but hey, I still believe in equal rights for all people, right? So, I wrote for a gay and lesbian blog for like 3-4 years. I was actually credentialed at the 2008 Democratic Convention there in Denver as an LGBT blogger. So I've followed Andrew Sullivan, for a long time. And despite him being a conservative and me being kind of liberal, we get along on a lot of points. Also there will be Ed Rosenthal, the guru of ganja. He legendary for all his grow books and all his grow techniques. He'll be talking. We've got Steve D'Angelo from Harborside Health Center. Everybody knows Stevie D. He's the largest marijuana dispensary, I guess you could say, in the world would be Harborside. And he's been fighting hard against the federal government and its attempts to use, IRS 280E and all that. He'll be talking about that. We've got elected officials that include U.S. Congressman Earl Blumenauer, my representative, my congressman, I get to vote for him, and State Senator Floyd Przansky and State Representative Peter Buckley from the state of Oregon. They'll talk about what's been going on in the Oregon legislature. We've got a Uruguayan official, Laura Blanco de Leon, will be there to talk about the experience of legalization in Uruguay, and Doug Fine, the best-selling author of Too High to Fail and Hempbound. He will be there. So it's going to be an amazing conference, and we will be covering it on 420 Radio. We hope you're able to tune in for some of that.
Illinois patients could start using medical marijuana in early 2015. On Tuesday, lawmakers who make up the obscure but powerful Joint Committee on Administrative Rules are meeting in Chicago to discuss the rules that would implement the Illinois medical cannabis pilot program. If the committee has no objections, the rules can officially be put to use in the process to begin registering the patients. The process to begin registering patients, dispensers, and growers can begin. Oh, sorry. I'm so important right now. I'm getting a call. Holy cow.
Well,
wow.
This happens to the best of us. I totally understand. But this.
All right, let me finish. Sorry.
Okay.
Patients who are approved by the state are expected to be able to start using medical marijuana early next year, said Bob Morgan, the state's medical marijuana program coordinator and a lawyer for the Illinois Department of Public Health. People with debilitating medical conditions seeking to use medical marijuana will be able to apply for a registry identification card beginning in September, Morgan said, though the application process will be staggered. Patients with last names starting A through L will start applying in September, while those with names beginning M through Z must wait until November.
Now, this is the part that I've got a big problem with. What are these people, medical marijuana patients or college freshmen? Doesn't it sound like enrollment in college, right? A through L, go over there, M through Z. Look, if people are sick, we shouldn't be discriminating against them based on what their surname might have to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, first come, first serve. We're not trying to hand out lockers, too.
Exactly, right? Imagine you're a guy who's got cancer and 2 months to live, but your name McDonald. Sorry, you don't get your medical cannabis. That's just insane. It makes no sense whatsoever, and it's really sad that it's come to that. Yeah. All right, I've got another story here that I was able to pick up off the lines before we went to post today, so it wasn't included for your script, unfortunately, but I did get this story that's coming off of 538.com, and this is the website where they do a lot of data crunching on politics, and I thought this was interesting to our audience, so I wanted to bring it up. The writer points out that the demand for marijuana, he's trying to estimate what is American demand for marijuana. People that use less than once per month would make up 6.5 million users that he wants to call occasional users. That there'd be people that use 1 to 20 times a month. Those would be 4.5 million regular users. And then people that use 20 times a month or more, those would be your 7.1 million heavy users of cannabis. And then using this, he tries to do some calculations to find out how many marijuana transactions and how much marijuana would be consumed in America. He says about 4.5 million people buy weed once a month, 7.1 million people buy weed twice a month. This comes out to 18.7 million professional marijuana transactions per month in the United States. Let's guess that a full-time pot dealer works every day, 8 hours a day, and can make one transaction per hour. Right. The dealer who deals with you within the hour. But anyway, that comes out to about 240 sales per month per pot dealer. There's a lot of liability for error in this estimate. The pace seems a bit speedy for a pot dealer. And it also assumes pot dealers don't run out of marijuana, but we're in the right order of magnitude with a couple hundred drug sales per month. He says with 18.7 million marijuana transactions per month and 240 transactions per dealer, Division says we'd need 77,917 pot dealers to satisfy demand. He says this seems reasonable and a little less than the number of employed real estate brokers. So, the estimate coming out of 538.com, 18.7 million transactions and a possible 78,000 marijuana dealers in the United States. That's 78,000 jobs that could be created here in the United States. Yep. All right, the bell means it's 20 after, and that means it's 4:20 in the Mountain Time Zone. Time for Priscilla to get engaged with a special safety meeting, as is required of all our union employees. Thanks, Priscilla, for the news. We'll talk to you Friday. We've got the day off tomorrow. Peace out. When we come back, we go behind the headlines in SEC college football. They seem to like their weed. Stick around.
420 Radio, your ticket to the Boston Freedom Rally.
Join us for the International Cannabis Business Conference September 13th and 14th in the Portland Ballroom at the Oregon Convention Center. The International Cannabis Business Conference will focus on the emerging cannabis industry in Oregon, the United States, and around the world, putting you in front of the industry's foremost entrepreneurs, political leaders, and attorneys. Also showcasing over 40 cannabis-related industry exhibitors, offering VIP lunches and 3 nightly networking events. Prepare yourself for America's next great industry.
The pistachio. Green, natural, and available without prescription in all 50 states. He's fine.
Hey, this is Willie Nelson for Normal. And I smoke pot and I like it a lot. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer than alcohol. There's nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting those who smoke marijuana responsibly. To learn what you can do to help, contact NORML at NORML.org or call toll-free 888-67-NORMAL.
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show and 420 Radio. Are you a hypocrite? If you live a closeted cannabis lifestyle, you are. Read about 7 people living a closeted cannabis lifestyle who are on the verge of coming out in The Hypocrites by Mara K. Eaton. Available at areyouahypocrite.net. You can purchase the book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, also available on iTunes. Check out Mara K. Eaton on Facebook as well. Learn more at areyouahypocrite.net.
Welcome back, everybody. Time for us to go behind the headlines, where this week there has been 2 very high-profile citations for marijuana that have occurred in the world of college football, specifically the SEC, the home of the last, 8, 9 national champions, so generally considered college football's strongest conference. The story comes from Alabama.com. Dashcam video shows Auburn quarterback Nick Marshall's traffic stop and marijuana possession citation. He was taken away in handcuffs, actually put in handcuffs to talk to the officer, who apparently the officer told WRBL-TV that he had a long conversation with the quarterback. So the cop knew this guy was the Auburn quarterback and got him into the squad car in handcuffs and said this: "I explained to Nick that I was really disappointed in him. I told him that there are a million kids that look up to him. He's a role model, whether he wants to be or not. I was disappointed that we have athletes out there doing that. I explained to him that we're not going to treat him any differently. I was disappointed in him. I hope he learns from his mistake, and this will put him on the right path." End quote. Oh, well, how sweet. Unfortunately, it's Auburn quarterback and not University of Oregon. Because at University of Oregon, we actually had a case out here last year where 3 University of Oregon players, and I forget which ones they were, but I think one of them was a quarterback. 3 University of Oregon players got pulled over on Interstate 5 driving 120 miles per hour. pulled him over at 120 miles per hour and smelled weed smoke in the car and asked the quarterback if anybody had any weed. And the quarterback said to the cop, after being pulled over at 120 miles per hour, "No, we smoked it all. We smoked it all." And these guys got off with a slap on the wrist. I don't even believe they were arrested. I don't even remember if they were cited or what happened, but basically it was no big deal. In fact, I'm more upset they got off of the speeding with 120 mile per hour speeding. That's reckless endangerment of the public, any more so than their pot use. But it's a different world in Alabama and in the SEC, where marijuana use is definitely not looked very highly upon. And according to the coach, Auburn coach Gus Malzahn said Monday that Marshall will face consequences for his actions. Didn't say whether or not he'd miss any playing time. Their first game is August 30th against Arkansas. So we'll see whether or not that has anything to do with it. Now, Marshall is one of the stars in the SEC. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the nation. He's viewed as a Heisman Trophy contender. He threw for 26 touchdowns last year and led Auburn to the BCS National Championship game, a big surprise for everyone. So this is one of the highest profile athletes in college football to get busted for marijuana possession. Now, also this week, just happened today, Florida freshman defensive back Jalen Tabor was cited for marijuana possession. This is coming off of CBSSports.com. Jalen Tabor is a 5-star prospect from Florida's 2014 recruiting class. He was cited for marijuana possession. Gainesville Police Department wrote that he was cited for less than 20 grams of marijuana on May 27th. On June 3rd, Tabor entered a deferred prosecution agreement for the misdemeanor charge. So, by the way, more than 20 grams in Florida would have been a felony. Apparently, he was found with less than 20 grams and now is being processed for that. And that might cause him lack of playing time or attention. And this is just becoming so ludicrous that eventually the college sports world and the professional sports world are going to have to recognize that there's going to be legal marijuana in 4 states after this next election, in 8 states by 2016. By 2020, who knows, maybe more than half the states will have some form of marijuana legalization. And people are going to start asking, why is my star player in my fantasy league? Why is the star quarterback on my alumni, my alma mater's football team not playing? Because they were caught doing something legal? They were caught using marijuana that's perfectly legal, and we're not benching them if they are going to the clubs and drinking and getting into fights and beating up their girlfriends? That's just not going to stand for very long, and money will win out in this one. A big-time quarterback like this guy, Nick Marshall, is going to cost some people some money if he's not playing. And that'll change a lot of minds. This ain't just some defensive back that we can, put off to the side that nobody's ever heard of and keep him on the bench. The more this continues to happen, the more legalization continues to grow, the more the sports world is going to have to recognize it's not about performance enhancement. In fact, it's about protecting their brains from concussions and recovering from pain and injury with something safer than OxyContin or fentanyl or these other drugs they pump into these guys. All right, folks, we got to take a break. When we come back, ladies of legalization, Sharon and Dr. Uma, and Diane Goldstein, coming up next.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, freeing your mind 24 hours a day. The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, treat law enforcement with respect and stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney." Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com. The Marijuana Business Association, or MJBA, are proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show. It is the mission of the MJBA to establish integrity and legitimacy, create common market standards, provide market intelligence, and develop best ethical business practices for participants in the emerging legal marijuana industry, including commercial hemp, medical marijuana, and recreational marijuana for adults. Learn more about the Marijuana Business Association and visit mjba.net to join today. That's mjba.net. Hemp Radio, replaying Wednesdays at 10 Pacific on...
Congressman Andy Harris thinks it's okay for medical marijuana patients to go to federal prison, even though Maryland passed a medical marijuana bill in April. On May 30th, Congressman Harris voted against an amendment to respect Maryland laws and protect Maryland patients. Why would Congressman Harris vote to send patients like this to prison? 72% of Maryland residents support medical marijuana. Is Congressman Harris out of touch with Maryland? Congressman Doc Hastings stood up for Washington's medical marijuana program and patients like Larry Harvey. Larry and his family are being prosecuted by the federal government, even though they were following Washington's 16-year-old medical marijuana law. On May 30th, Congressman Hastings voted for an amendment that would protect Washington's medical marijuana program and its patients from federal interference. Will the next representative from District 4 respect Washington voters? No, before you vote.
In 1929, Pauline Sabet began the women's movement to end alcohol prohibition. 4 years later, the 21st Amendment was passed. Women are crucial to ending adult marijuana prohibition, and we celebrate women's marijuana activism in a segment we call Ladies of Legalization.
All right, folks. All right, we're going to go back to the archives for these. Enjoy.
Hey, Radical Russ here at the Georgia State Capitol. We're in front of the office of Governor Nathan Beal, and I'm here with Sharon Raymond, the Executive Director of Peachtree Normal, with a very special guest to introduce to the campus community. Take it away, Sharon.
Dr. Uma, and say your last name. Dr. Baldwin is here, and she is going to be talking to our legislators in Georgia about how we need to expand CBD oil to further include other people in the medical marijuana bill in Georgia. And that's what we're here doing today. She came to us from Washington State. She's a cannabis therapeutic specialist. She is an MD, and I will let her speak a few words to the listening audience.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure, and thank you very much, Sharon, for this invitation. It's truly a pleasure to be able to be in front of the legislative people and explain and hopefully expand what cannabis can be used for. As many of you know, cannabis has been around for thousands of years. We are now trying to get it as a medical marijuana use, hopefully toward everybody in the nation. Right now, we have 20 states in Eastern Columbia where medical marijuana laws are, and we are really expanding right here in Georgia. Thank you very much.
Watch out, folks. We got Dr. Uma in from Washington, Radical Russ in from Portland. The Pacific Northwest is coming here to the South. We're going to help get these laws changed to help more patients, more people, and the state of Georgia itself from these terribly punitive marijuana laws. Sharon, part of doing that. Check out peachtreenormal.org and make a donation of support today. Your dollars will go further than you could ever imagine. But 2 years ago, they couldn't even say marijuana in this bill.
Exactly. In 2 years, here we are trying to pass a medical marijuana bill, and it didn't cost a whole lot of money.
You got it. Send it in. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Dr. Uma. It's such a pleasure to meet you.
Just want to leave you guys off with the word that cannabis is not the entrance drug. It is truly the exit drug for pharmaceuticals in our products.
Absolutely right. Got me on the exit. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Senate offices, state Senate offices here in the Georgia State Capitol, doing what lobbyists do a lot of, and that is wait. It's Dr. Uma and Sharon, and of course Dean and Kelly. There's Dean. Kelly's to the other side of me, and we are sitting here waiting at one of the senator's offices. We have a meeting with him to discuss expanding medical marijuana here in the state of Georgia. So stay tuned.
I mean, how many are out there? And these were all children.
We're educated in what areas? We'll come up with that before you leave town. Then we'll come up with one. We'll send everything out.
Very simple, 5 questions, that's it.
All right, we're at the statue of Jimmy Carter here at the Georgia State Capitol, and Sharon and Dr. Uma have just spoken. Who did you speak with, the state senator?
Senator Kurt Thompson.
Kurt Thompson. How did he respond to your requests?
He gave us 5 minutes to start with, and I think we were in there for about 45. So things went really well. He's very open to the discussion, and he asked Dr. Uma here a lot of questions. Got her card, and we're hoping that he will utilize her services and her knowledge.
Dr. Uma, what did you get to tell him?
I was very fortunate and very happy we had the time to talk with him. He was very open and did not rush us, and actually gave us points to ponder on how to get his other colleagues to be educated, and hopefully we will plan to have a survey out so we can see what their knowledge is right now and what we can do to educate them. And we will go forward with this a little bit at a time.
Excellent work. This is lobbying. This is grassroots activism at its best. Dr. Uma and Sharon working here at the Georgia State Capitol, working right there below Jimmy Carter, who actually brought medical marijuana to Georgia. And you guys have gotten a CBD bill that's been gone through. Did you talk a little bit about that and why patients need more than just CBD?
Yes, we did. We talked about that. I think there again, more education needs to be brought about, but it is a starting point, so hopefully much more will come, and I think we will see a lot more information within the next year and more bills that will be promoting not just medical cannabis, but also decriminalization and hopefully legalization and remove this prohibition on cannabis.
Excellent. Sharon, if folks want to help out Peachtree Normal, give them some contact info.
Okay, you can reach us at www.peachtreenormal.org. All of the information's there. You can reach us and contact us at peachtreenormal.org, or the number is 706-525-9970. We need you. Get involved.
That's right, folks. If they can do it in Georgia, you can do it wherever you're at. ContactNormal.org if you'd like to start a chapter. You just need 5 people to get involved. You can do just like Sharon did and make waves at your state house. From the Atlanta State Capitol, I'm Radical Russ. That's Sharon and Dr. Uma. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Well, Diane Goldstein, of course, is a member of the LEAP Board of Directors, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, former law enforcement yourself from Redondo Beach, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Right. And this year, I mean, just this past year has been amazing as far as the changes that are going on. I hope you got to see Representative Cohen and Representative Blumenauer going off on the drug czar.
Rock stars.
How does it feel now? Because you've been involved in this for a while. I mean, just feels like the tide's turned.
You know what? I think that law enforcement is startling to recognize that they're at the turning point. And I think outside of the mainstream professional organizations, you're seeing some very interesting things. Number one is what happened to Botticelli, the deputy director, what's happened to Miss Lenhart in the past.
Oh, yeah.
Is law enforcement has got to start evolving, and we're doing it in some really interesting ways that are outside of like the International Association of Chiefs of Police or the California Narcs or, you know, the California Chiefs, where you have now proof. The implementation of Colorado is classic. First day, you know, first week, 5 million sold, didn't see a single solitary kid in line.
Right.
Doesn't that show you that the system can work? There were no shootings. There were no, if there would have been drunk drivers or accidents that occurred in that week, we would know about it already because law enforcement would be waving that flag.
Oh, yeah.
And so Washington's going to successfully implement in that fashion. And then this year, I think, Oregon, Alaska, California, we'll see if anything makes it on the ballot. But if something did, then we would have virtually the whole entire West Coast legal. Yeah. But by 2016, I think that you will have the entire West Coast legal, and you're going to start seeing Florida will, I believe, pass medical marijuana despite law enforcement opposition because of congressional hearings, because of LEAP's work, because of NORML, because of so many great organizations, the Drug Policy Alliance, MPP, that continue to push policy forward, and we're gonna grab the cops kicking and screaming, but they're gonna come. So interesting enough, there was a policeone.com poll. Now it's an unscientific poll, but I've been following them for several years because what they do is they post a survey. Should marijuana be legalized? And it's yes. What are you high? Depends on the regulation, and they've been doing it since 2010 during Prop 19. Well, they released it again. And you saw from the 2011 to the 2013 when they did it, there's been a significant shift in points, even in an unscientific survey, like by 10 points. Yeah. So it went from like 42% who supported the legalization of marijuana on Police One to 55 with soft yeses depending on the regulatory process. So what is going to happen is when Washington, or as Colorado has done, the cops won't be afraid because they'll see it can work. And I think that's one of the things that is significantly important, that we need to continue to push policy that's based on science, best practice, and evidence. And then down the road, we're going to look back and go, why was marijuana ever illegal?
We certainly hope so. And the only glitch or hang up that I can point to in the implementation in Colorado is not Colorado's fault. It's the banking situation, that they're not allowed to have banks. And I saw some statistics showing that there was like a 50% rate in burglaries and robberies. They have something like 347 licenses in Denver, and 317 of the licensees reported having being robbed or burgled. And that's frightening to me. But again, that's the situation of having so much cash around and nowhere to deposit it.
That's the whole issue of prohibition. But I think that's even going to change, and what I'm hoping is that if Eric Holder really is true to his word, that we're going to see some banking regulation that will make the banks comfortable enough to do it. But I think it actually is going to go to the bigger issue, which is we need to deschedule cannabis, period, simple, end of story. And once we do that, although for a lot of people who feel that that's not really the most significant issue, it'll at least have that air of legitimacy that will make the banks feel safe in accepting business practices like this. Last year, you had both in Colorado and California, the DEA try to pressure armored companies not to do business. And I wrote a Huffington Post blog that basically said, how bad do you have to be in law enforcement? How unethical that you would encourage crime in your communities. And part of that is, I think that the big problem with the DEA is they're not local community cops. They're not accountable to the community. They have no stake in serving their community because they quite frankly at this point are just the big bullies on the block.
We're speaking with Diane Goldstein, a board member from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and while this is a cannabis cup, we're talking about legalization. Law Enforcement Against Prohibition is about legalization, period. All drugs and prohibition. This last week we had the tragic death of Philip Seymour Hoffman from a heroin overdose, and that brings that issue to the fore and makes people think about, we could legalize weed, but gosh, legalizing heroin, would we really want to do that? kind of walk people through why we can't stop at cannabis.
Sure. It's very simple. What you have to start looking at with regard to drug policy in its entirety is we as Americans need to accept that there are going to be people that are addicted to substances, whether it's heroin or whether it's methamphetamine or Ritalin or opiates. Okay, alcohol, it goes across everything. And we don't criminalize people who are alcoholics until they engage in a specific criminal behavior, like drunk driving, or like beating someone up, or like, in my 22 years in law enforcement, I have bad backs because of all the fights with drunks, but never once because I ever got in a fight with someone who was a cannabis consumer.
Sure.
But what happens is the more we criminalize, the less resources we have to actually deal with the public health issues that actually occur because of drug addictions. And so Philip Seymour Hoffman, if we had adopted a public health model like, let's say, some European countries, or even like methadone, okay?
Yeah.
If we adopt harm reduction where there is naloxone that's been issued to anyone, so if someone goes into an opioid overdose, you can reverse it. Where there's needle exchange programs where we actually teach and train people about the realities of chronic drug use or substance abuse. And yes, heroin is significantly more dangerous than marijuana, but interesting enough, if you look at the academic research and the studies, that if it was treated like a medical issue, you wouldn't have the hot shots, you wouldn't have the combination of the fentanyl and the heroin that probably produced or maybe didn't produce his death. You wouldn't have the cutting of drugs like happens even with cannabis sometimes with pesticides or things that are bad for human consumption. You'd have an appropriately regulated market that the government would be in control of and not the criminals. Now, we can argue about what that post-prohibition world is going to look like. So maybe for cannabis, it's going to be, cultivators will be working under the Department of Agriculture. Then if you make a non-CBD, THC recreational adult use, then it's going to be like alcohol. Then there's going to be a pharmaceutical side to it. And the same thing with heroin or other drugs. In California, maybe we want to address our drug policy if the feds got out of it by saying heroin is going to be not available over the counter for people, but it's going to be a medical issue. And it's going to be done like Europe does with heroin-assisted treatment programs where they have seen dramatic decreases in crime because heroin addicts are no longer having to go steal in order to get their heroin. It's actually a public health issue. You being an addict is between you and your medical provider, and you're not getting heroin to get you high. You're getting heroin to make you maintain because you're chemically dependent. And what we've seen is that people have been able to wean themselves off very successfully through heroin-assisted programs. Different than methadone, which is much more dangerous for people.
Yeah. Well, Diane Goldstein from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, thanks for giving us some of your time here on this beautiful day in California. It's 20 degrees and 3 inches of snow in Portland. So
not bad. It's always a great place to come, Russ. It's always a pleasure. You know where to find me.
Oh, I sure
love
do.
you, buddy.
Oh, I love you too. All right, we're going to go back to some music here, let you get on your way, have some fun. That was our coverage of the High Times Cannabis Cup in Los Angeles, and we spoke with Diane Goldstein from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, one of my favorite legalizers out there. When we come back, we'll have time for a radical rant. I'm going to give you some of Kevin Sabet's latest stupid debate talking points and the easy ways to debunk them. I'm Radical Russ, live from Rolla J Studios. We're back after this.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, your ticket to Seattle Hemp Fest. Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective. Check out lushledlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you. In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
Some people start slumming as a social thing, you know? I probably wouldn't do it by myself.
That was mine.
Slumming stands for sticking leeches on myself.
Leeches?
Yeah, leeches.
I don't get it. I've had to confiscate all this. It's a problem.
It's like you hear people talking about slumming over the weekend.
It's hard not to get into it.
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org. When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The Law Office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email fireduplawyer@gmail.com.
You can't handle the truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended the Shaolin Temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, immorality in general.
How in the century you have slurred the meaning of the words we, the people.
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, everybody. 52 after the hour. Excuse me. Wrong clock. Watching the Kevin Sabet debate today against Judge Jim Gray, I was prepared for a lot of the things he was going to say, but he came up with some new things since legalization has happened. He's had to pivot his arguments somewhat because the scary propositions of the bad things that would happen after you legalize aren't so scary anymore now that the bad things haven't happened. But there was one theme that ran through a lot of what he talked about, his number one theme, which is it'll create a new big tobacco, a predatory industry like big tobacco that'll go after our kids, it'll addict our kids and create lifelong addicts. And I think where Kevin Sabet is ultimately losing this argument is that it's too late for that argument to be scary. There are enough people now that have smoked marijuana who know someone who smokes marijuana or have at least just seen marijuana being legalized in Washington and Colorado to be really frightened about it anymore. When Kevin Sabet talks about these industries creating lifelong addicts, I think Kevin Sabet is intending the word addict to be this big millstone around our neck, right? To weigh us down because we'd be addicts. And I think that most people out there are sophisticated enough now on the marijuana issue to understand that even if someone was a marijuana addict, they ain't a heroin addict. They're not a coke addict. They're not a meth addict. They're not an alcoholic. They're not a cigarette smoker. I think people are beginning to understand, and we see it through the polls now, where 3 out of 4 people polled now agree with President Obama that marijuana is no more harmful than alcohol, right? Less than or equal to. And then 25% of the people think that marijuana is safer than alcohol. Less than, right? So people are beginning to understand the equation, and they understand that even in the worst case scenario, if we legalize marijuana and somebody decides, oh, I'm just going to smoke pot every day, all day, that even that isn't as bad as contributing to murderous Mexican cartels, as bad as keeping street gangs in business, as bad as providing some source of dealing income for high school kids. I think people are beginning to understand that, and that's why his rhetoric now is beginning to ring really hollow for people. When he tries to bring out the Sabet conjecture, that's the same old thing that he's done before. We know from alcohol and tobacco, for every $1 we bring in taxes, there's $10 in social costs. He didn't spend a whole lot of time on that one because now people can go, well, wait a minute. Didn't I read in a paper the other day that they've made like $30 million in taxes in Colorado? So 30 million times 10 would mean there's $300 million in social costs, and nobody believes that. Nobody is seeing mass social cost going on in Colorado. What they are seeing is a decline in police and court prosecutions for marijuana that have declined from around 800 a month to about 100, 150 a month. And all the court time that's saving, all the police time that's saving. What they are seeing is lines of people lining up to get marijuana, lines that are very safe and friendly and nobody's getting in fights or nothing. And they think, gee, every one of those people is contributing sales tax to the schools. That's what they're seeing, and that's why Kevin Sabet can't go anywhere. Another thing he tried to go to, the cartels. He tries to paint a straw man argument of, well, they say legalization will end the cartels, but the cartels will still be there. They'll be doing human trafficking and selling coke and meth and heroin. To who? Who they gonna sell it to, right? People that smoke marijuana, by and large, aren't heroin, coke, or meth users. The only interface they have with heroin, coke, or meth is the illegal market, where that's also sold. There's a reason why they don't call tequila a gateway drug. It's because it's not on the shelves next to cocaine. Okay, so we take marijuana away from that market. We found that in the Netherlands when we took marijuana and mushrooms out of the hard drug market, out of one illegal market, and put them into a semi-tolerated market, that the use of the hard drugs went down. So these are some things that he had to say that were pretty familiar. I've heard him before, but he had one thing to say that, they say even a stopped clock is right twice a day. Even the sun shines on a dog's ass sometimes, right? You've heard those sayings. Kevin Sabet said something I agree with and wholeheartedly support. He said, quote, "We're never going to have a .08 standard for marijuana," and came out to agree that there should be there shouldn't be a .08 per se standard. Came out to agree that marijuana's the way it's metabolized is different than alcohol. So, thank you. Kevin Sabet is against per se driving standards for marijuana impairment. That's a positive note. Of course, the cartels aren't going to go away. They're criminals. Criminals do crime. That's their gig. The question is, why do we give the marijuana market to criminals when Americans who will obey laws are more than willing to do so? And the final thing he said, a similar kind of thing, he says, the black market won't go away because kids under 21, they'll still go to the black market. And people that want over 20% buds, if those are banned, they'll go to the black market. And people who want concentrates, if those are banned, they'll go to the black market. So the argument is, if the black market can't completely be eradicated, it should all be black market. Does that make any sense to anybody? If you want to see just how silly it was for your own damn self, check out tomorrow's show. I'll be on an airplane flying to Fort Lauderdale, but I recorded a show for tomorrow. The first hour is the debate itself. The second hour is me critiquing the debate. I think you'll really enjoy it. That's all the time we got for hour one. Stay tuned for hour two, Toker Talk Radio. We'll take your calls at 971-533-7111, where you are the voice of the Marijuana Nation. We got some news from High Times and Sirius XM Radio we'll be talking about, and taking a look at my position on the Oregon DAs that's getting a lot of play. For Priscilla Seib, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you